The Untouchable True School Sports Empire proudly presents something the boxing games are missing. Hey, what's going on? It's your boy BT, and I came here to talk some boxing with the thousands of True School Sports subscribers. And yes, we are back live again. It is, in fact, the immediate aftermath of Tszyu beating Errol Spence Jr., sending him off into the sunset, but not in such a overly dominant fashion, not in such a, you know, it wasn't what an exclamation point. It was a sloppy fight in my estimation, in my opinion. You know, I wasn't scoring the fight live, like round by round, but it felt like a 116, 112 type of fight for Tszyu. The judges were in and around that same ballpark. So I mean, it wasn't like a great fight. And for me, for my vantage point, I really do feel like, really and truthfully, a lot of people will make a lot of the fact that Errol Spence is past it. Errol Spence is shot. Errol Spence is not what he used to be. All those things are true, and they should be when you're 36 years old, coming off of a devastating loss to Terrence Crawford, and you've been out of the ring for over 1,000 days. That should be the case. But I think the story within this fight is that as shot and as shop worn as Errol Spence is, I don't think Tszyu is that much shop worn. He's not that far off. He's not that far off, and that's why I think the fight played out the way it did. You had Errol Spence Jr., who at this stage of his career, this was his first and only fight without being under the guidance of his longtime trainer Derek James, who built his from the ground up as a coach and did a great job, and made him a world champion multiple times over. But he got Ronnie Shields. Ronnie Shields tried to teach an old dog new tricks, and maybe the mind was willing, maybe the spirit was willing, but the body wasn't willing. Errol Spence tried to be more mobile, try to box, try to move, but that's not Errol Spence. And the legs and his base were not strong enough to do a lot of the things that Ronnie Shields and him were trying to implement in this fight. So that was one side of it. Errol was still mauling Tszyu, or trying to maul Tszyu, trying to be physical. He was going to the body. And Tszyu, he was landing the cleaner, more telling, more sharper shots down the middle with the right hand. But when he would land when he would land his best shots, ultimately he would let her off the hook, and he would sit there and pose and admire his work. And the Tszyu that fought Tony Harrison, I think about that version of Tszyu a lot. And granted, it wasn't the best Tony Harrison, but Tszyu versus Tony Harrison, Tszyu versus Brian Mendoza, Tszyu early in his career, when he would land really big shots on you, especially with the right hand, he would follow up and he would throw 3s and 4s and 5s and just really put the numbers together. And there were so many times in this fight where it looked like Tim could have taken that extra initiative to get Errol out of there, and he just wouldn't run the numbers against him. And if I'm giving Tszyu the benefit of the doubt, I would say it's a confidence thing. Bakram took away his confidence. Vendura twice with those fights took away his confidence. But if I'm not giving him the benefit of the doubt, then I gotta say that Tszyu is washed up. So y'all can tell me in the chat which one you think it is. I'm gonna be here for like 2 hours. It's 2:25 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm wide awake. I ain't tired. We don't get tired on True School Sports. We get better. We get better here on True School Sports. So I'm gonna be here. I'm gonna be here for the 2 hours. I'm gonna give you guys the honest 2 hours, as I always give you the honest 2 hours. As this is in fact the home of boxing here on YouTube. I hope you guys are doing great wherever you're at in the world. Do me a favor. Let me know where you guys are watching from. I want to know how international we are. If you're in the States, let me know what part of the States you're in. If you're abroad, if you're in, Europe, if you're from Australia, let me know in the chat. I want to know. But before I get into any more Spence Tszyu talk and break down the fight and what's next and celebrate the career of Errol Spence and all that blase, let's take some time to acknowledge the fine folks already here, making their presence felt, and doing the thing in the chat. So we see who we got in the chat. We got Jesus M in the building. Shout out to Jesus. There he says it was a tough watch. Yeah, I concur. I agree. Martha Prince, salute to you. B Ruiz, salute to you. Nah, I don't think he was. So I don't think he was. I don't think he was assaulted before the fight. It's just that, bro, you haven't boxed for 1,000+ days. Um, your legs. Like Errol Spence was never like the mover. He wasn't a mover even in his prime. He was a guy that planted his feet, had a good base, solid jab, high volume jab, get downhill on you, wear you out, place to the body. That was his style. He can't fight that style no more because he's too long in the tooth, and it is what it is. Like I say, man, this boxing game, boxing's a jealous woman. If you cheat on this boxing game, it's a jealous woman. Errol Spence Jr., I don't want to demonize the guy or condemn him because who am I? But when you drink and you don't live the life for a prolonged period of time, it will show up, and it does count. It doesn't go away just because you do good and be disciplined for a certain stretch. It counts. Everything counts in boxing. Every shot that someone lands on you in a fight, in sparring, any day you didn't get your rest, any food you didn't eat properly, any day you didn't rest properly, it all counts, and it will all show up down the road. So don't think you'll ever get one over on boxing. It all shows up eventually. So that's where I'm at. Oh, don't you worry, Mother Prince. We're gonna get to Shiraz in a second. We'll get to Shiraz in a second because a lot of y'all people, Rick Glazer, just people in boxing doing too much for Hamza Shiraz, and I've been telling y'all he's not like that. He's a good fighter, but he's not like that. And y'all think that Ring Magazine knows more than True School Sports about boxing, and they don't anymore. Maybe they used to, but this new Ring Magazine, the propaganda machine, they don't know more than boxing than True School Sports. And I'm gonna say it like that. If it sounds cocky, it is what it is. It ain't cocky if it's the truth. So that being said, yeah, man, let's talk Tszyu versus Errol Spence, all right? Because I wanna really just peel every last little layer of this. Make sure you guys smash the like button. If you're new to these parts and you like the content, do yourself a favor and definitely subscribe to the channel. A lot of great content, and we're always working here on True School Sports to deliver you guys great stuff. We'll be at the Zepeda Roach fight next week, so definitely tune in for that. There's going to be a lot of great content coming from that fight, so make sure you definitely stay tuned for that. But Tszyu Errol Spence. So let's talk about the fight. So like I told you guys, it was a very sloppy fight. I thought Tszyu won the fight clearly. It wasn't a fight the outcome was in question. Errol Spence tried. I think Errol Spence was caught in between two styles. I think he was trying to implement some of the things that Ronnie Shields was showing him in the gym, making him more mobile, making him more of a mover. But he's not a mover, and he's 36. So it wasn't going to work. And you saw from the very first round, I think Errol threw like a overhand left, or it was a left hand of some sort, and his back leg looked very unstable from the very first punch he threw, and it was a precursor of things to come. And he couldn't really be a mover in this fight on a consistent basis. So then he tried to maul Tszyu, and he tried to fight the Errol Spence style, and he did have. I'll give Errol credit, for all the things we could say he isn't anymore. What he definitely is a tough son of a gun. He's a tough guy, proud person, proud champion, proud warrior. And even like I think a lot of times what Chris Eubank Sr. talks about in the Warriors Code, where there's no retreat and there's no surrender, and how fighters, they are not allowed even for a second to be like us normal folk, us normal civilian. They must act and behave like champions, even when they don't feel like it. And the mark of a true fighter isn't just how he performs when he's at his best, but more so how he performs when he's in a compromised state, when he's not at his best, when things aren't working, when he's physically not to his optimum shape or optimum condition. And I think it's fair to say that that's where Errol Spence is. And Errol Spence was not the fresher fighter, and Tszyu was fighting in his natural weight class, right? And he just didn't have it tonight. And he could have packed it in. He definitely could have packed it in and looked for a way out and probably quit. And I don't think that many people would have really have criticized him for it, because you're coming out of a 3-year layoff. You're 36 now. The last time we saw you, you got butchered all over the ring by Terrence Crawford. So if you would have looked for a way out, I'm sure there's plenty of people that would have given Errol Spence a pass, right? And he still found a way, even in the worst state of his career, to go the 12 rounds. So I mean, I know Nobody wants to hear all this moral victory bullshit, but in a sense, it is a bit of a moral victory for Earl Spence because that definitely is not, the Earl Spence that fought Ugas or Lamont Peterson or Kell Brook. This is a guy that really and truthfully, let's be honest, probably shouldn't even have a boxing license, right? But fighter, dogs bark, cats meow, and fighters fight. So, as Earl Spence eloquently stated many years ago, I'm a fighting motherfucker. So that's what he did. He fought. So yeah, I mean, I would say through like 6 rounds, it was really anybody's fight because I thought for as bad and as past it and as compromised as Earl Spence looked, Tim Tszyu wasn't doing himself any favors. He was letting Earl Spence run the numbers, close the gap, and land shots on the inside. And it became one of those fights, especially in the first 6 rounds, where it was like a matter of what do you like more? Do you appreciate the sharper, cleaner, mid-range counter shots, or sometimes in some scenarios where he leads the exchanges from Tim Tszyu? Or do you appreciate the effort, the lunch pail, the blue-collar, workman-like style that Earl Spence was firing in the pocket? It became one of those kind of fights. And then, of course, as the fight wore on, I think, Tim Tszyu being the slight, and I say slightly fresher because I don't think Tim Tszyu is that far behind Earl Spence. I think he's been through so many wars that, irrespective of age, he ain't that far behind Earl Spence. Irrespective of that, he was a little more fresh than Earl. He's at his natural weight class, and I think that played a big factor in why he won the fight. So, yeah, is it the biggest win of Tim Tszyu's career? I mean, in terms of names, yes, I think it definitely is. In terms of name value, I mean, Earl Spence is a household name in the sport of boxing. He's one of the few fighters in America that over the last 10 years that's proven to be a draw and commercially viable. So, yeah, I think it's good for him. I think it helps him out and cementing him further in the Australian boxing market. Tim Tszyu has never lost in Australia. Neither has his father and neither has his brother Nikita, right? So the Tszyu family legacy and the Tszyu castle remains an absolute fortress for opposing fighters. They talk about the Mayweather code and the Mavici code. No one has cracked the Tim Tszyu, the Tszyu code, the Tszyu castle code. The Tszyu castle code is still firmly intact, right? All these years later across the generations. And, Tim Tszyu, he may not win on American soil, but when he's in Australia, the guy is like Sugar Ray Leonard. He does not lose in Australia. So, yeah, he wins this fight, but it didn't really do. It really didn't convince me that Tim Tszyu is gonna do much in the sport, much more above this level in the sport of boxing. They mentioned him fighting Lara, so he mentioned fighting Lara. So, is Tim Tszyu gonna be a middleweight now? I mean, possibly. Could Tim Tszyu beat Arizona Lara? I'll be honest with you, as much as I don't like Lara, I don't know if Tim Tszyu beats Arizona Lara. Lara can still punch. Lara's still crafty. And Tim Tszyu is still very, very hittable. So I don't know if I think Tim Tszyu will win that fight. I think the two fights that he should look at, if I was in a management position for Tim Tszyu, there's two fights at middleweight I'll look at. All right. Now, Lara, you can consider that fight. Yohan Elise Hernandez, I would run for cover. Don't go anywhere near Yohan Elise Hernandez. Don't fight Amari Jones. Don't fight Jahai Tucker. I don't think he beats those kind of guys. But if we're looking at fights where, fights that are either A, winnable or very marketable fights, I think Tim Tszyu versus Xander Zayas does great business. And I think it makes a lot of sense. Xander's coming off of a loss to Boots. He's considering going up to middleweight and wants to become a champion. So I think, getting a win against Tim Tszyu would do a lot for his value and getting him back on track. And, you got Australia and Puerto Rico, two proud boxing countries. I think that one could work. If they can't do that fight and they want to chuck Tim Tszyu straight into a world title fight, Tim Tszyu is ranked pretty highly in the WBO at 154. I'm pretty sure if he's at 60, he would be in a great position to fight the newly crowned WBO champion, which right now is Denzel Bentley. Now, I had a chance to interview Denzel Bentley a couple days ago. I haven't dropped it yet, but I will be dropping it soon in the coming days. And Bentley was very adamant that he wants big fights. He said that he would love to fight Xander Zayas. He would love to fight Tim Tszyu. He would love to fight anybody with a big name now that he's champion. He even called out Carlos Adames. So when that interview drops, y'all can check it out. But I actually think if I was in a management position with Tim Tszyu, I would use my status in the WBO rankings and I would move Tim Tszyu in the direction of a Denzel Bentley. I think that fight's I think it's a winnable fight for Tim Tszyu, but I also think it's an exciting fight, and I think it's the kind of fight that would entertain the boxing fans. And if he can win it, he's now a two division champion. So those are my thoughts on Spence versus Tszyu. I want to give Errol Spence a very, very big tip of the cap on a magnificent boxing career. Unified champion, 3 belts, been in a lot of big fights, sold a lot of tickets. Was definitely somebody that mattered in his time in the fight game. So respect to him. Before I get to the comments, because I see I got 42 comments, so shout out to you guys commenting. I'm going to run through the comments here in a second. But one thing I'll say about Errol Spence, because I asked my dad in the post-fight review video what his best memory of Errol Spence was. And my dad said that his best memory of Errol Spence was when he went to the UK and he snatched the belt off Kell Brook, right? Which was a great fight. Now, for me, my favorite Errol Spence memory, what I can say about Errol is I like the Chris Algieri fight. The Chris Algieri fight is a fight that is very near and dear to my heart because oddly enough, in my early years covering the sport of boxing, the first time I ever went to New York City was February of 2016 to watch Terrence Crawford fight Hank Lundy. The second time I ever went to New York City was just 2 months later, and I covered Errol Spence versus Krzysztof Glowacki, and that was my first time covering a fight at the Barclays Center. So he was amazing that night. He overpowered the outgunned, overmatched Chris Algieri, and it was a sensational performance. That was a great memory for me covering Errol Spence, and even in the build up to this fight, I had a chance to go to the introductory press conference during Benavidez Zotto fight week, and it was great catching up with Earl. That was a great memory. So he's always been gracious with his time with the media for the most part. He's always, albeit I think it took 5 years too long. I mean, the Terrence Crawford fight was marinated, and we talked about that a lot over the years with all the politics and the size of the street and all that. But nonetheless, the fight did happen. The better man won, which was Terrence Crawford, and just congrats to Earl on a great career. And I can't say I didn't enjoy it. I can't say it didn't matter. So this wasn't that Errol Spence from back in the day, so I won't hold it against him. But credit to him for going 12 rounds. So. Anyway, let me go to the comments, man. Shout out to everybody here rocking with your boy BT and the untouchable True School Sports Empire. Oh, my God. Matt Borgeson, we see you, champ. We got 3 super chats from Matt Borgeson, and I'm going to run through them all. Shout out to my boy Matt, who's always supporting. He says, no shame on Earl's performance. Haters are going to hate. I will concur. And a lot of times, too, these days, with a lot of the boxing fans, like even when you get great fights, people will find a way to nitpick it. So, yeah. He also says that Tim Tszyu should avoid Yohan Elise Hernandez by any and all means. And I would agree, man. Like, Yohan Elise Hernandez, I still want to see a bit more from him. I feel like everybody's too quick to give him the boogeyman title and this, that, and the third. He's a good fighter. He did beat Kyron Davis in devastating fashion. So he's a good fighter. I give him that. But, yeah, Tim Tszyu is not beating no damn Yohan Elise Hernandez. That fight would not even go fight. That fight wouldn't even get to the 6th round. I think Yohan Elise stops him inside of 6 rounds. If I'm Tim, stay away from him. Stay away from Amari Jones. Stay away from Jahai Tucker. The best route he can go, I would say, is Denzel Bentley. But even with that fight, let's not get it fucked up about Bentley. Like, Denzel Bentley can punch. Denzel Bentley is willing to let his hands go. And if you get Tim Tszyu, who's in there posturing and landing one good shot and taking a picture of his work, Denzel Bentley will get Tim Tszyu out of there. So even that one is dangerous. I agree. I don't think that Tim Tszyu really has anything for Yohan Elise Hernandez. But again, I mean, if PBC could get that fight for Yohan Elise Hernandez, that could be a potential fight to build his name up because, for Cuban fighters, it's hard to build a name up because a lot of them don't speak English. Not in Yohan Elise Hernandez's case, but, a lot of them don't have a crowd-pleasing style, so they're fighting that uphill battle. So Now, 1000%. Steer very clear of Yohan Elise Hernandez. It's not going to work out for him. You understand? Um, Thank you for the super chats, Matt. I appreciate you. Martin Rose says, True School Sports, I love your boxing passion and dedication. That's a great fight idea. And shout out to you, champ. Thank you for the love. And are you talking about Tim versus Bentley? Trick Notes, he was good, champ. It was a pleasure meeting you out there in Brooklyn at the Barclays. Hope all is well. God bless you. And yeah, man, good to see you in the chat. Good to see everybody in the chat. Where's everybody at? Where's everybody from? But yeah, man, Tszyu, it's kind of crazy when you think of Tszyu in the sport of boxing, like just back in early 2024, before he lost that first Fundora fight. Think about it. Like Keith One Time Thurman, we all knew that he wasn't even his best version of himself back then. And PBC was using Tszyu as the face of Amazon Prime, the new Amazon Prime deal. And he was supposed to headline the first Amazon Prime show with Keith One Time Thurman. Keith One Time Thurman does what he's done a lot of in his career, and he pulled out at the 11th hour. And Tszyu got done dirty because they switched him out with Fundora. And Fundora took him to the trenches, and he ain't been the same since. He lost that fight. Then they were like, okay, well, we'll get him a tune-up fight with Bakram. And then Bakram tuned his ass up. And then then he fought Fundora again not too long after that. And what happened. And even before that, even in the midst of all that, Tszyu had a contract signed to fight Virgil Ortiz. That fell through. So it's like Tszyu, I remember it as clear as day because I was there in 2022 when he came to Las Vegas for his media workouts for his American debut. Because if you guys remember, he fought Terrell Goucher back in 2022 in his American debut. And it was a big deal. It was a big deal when he came to America for the first time. He was looked at to be one of boxing's next big potential like superstars, not stars, but superstars, because he was doing numbers over there in Australia, right? And he has that Tim Costa Tszyu, his dad, and we all know how great of a fighter his father was, right? So he was on an upward trajectory, and it's actually really sad to see what's happened to Tszyu. And I'm hoping that this fight could be a building block for him to recapture some of that form. But I mean, it's hard to see. Those weren't no regular fights he was in. He was in some real hellacious wars, and boxing's not just about your age. You understand? It's not just about what it says on the piece of paper. It's about the wars you've really been in. It's about what the body has gone through, and his body has gone through quite a lot. So, we'll see what happens with Tim. Matt Borgeson says, and thank you once again for the super chat. He says, Yohan Elise Hernandez versus Carlos Adames at 168. It's a good fight, hell of a fight. There's not many people running to fight Yohan Elise Hernandez right now. And there's not many people running to fight Carlos Adames right now. The only guy that I know for a fact would fight those guys for sure is probably Denzel Bentley, because I just talked to him. You guys will see it in the coming days, but I just talked to him, and I didn't even mention Carlos Adames when I interviewed him. I didn't even mention Carlos Adames. He mentioned Carlos Adames. I wasn't even going to ask him about Carlos Adames. He mentioned Carlos Adames. So I feel like he will fight him, but there's not many guys that will fight either one of those guys because it's all risk reward. The risk ain't worth the reward. These guys, management teams, if they can, are going to steer clear of both guys because both those guys are very, very dangerous and could give you life-altering type of beating. So that's what it is. Nah, man. I thought the footwork was very. I mean, first and foremost, whether you get two fighters in their prime or two guys past it like Errol Spence and Tszyu, when you get an orthodox and a southpaw fighter, there's always going to be that jockeying for position. You're going to get fighters stepping on each other's foot. It's always a battle, right? So there was that, but it didn't help that Errol Spence Jr. was falling over his front foot. His back leg wasn't stable. And it didn't help Tszyu that he was content to let Errol Spence smother him for many spots of this fight, which is why I feel like he lost as many rounds as he did. If he would have been the Tim Tszyu of old that was running the numbers with his punches, then maybe I think he would have stopped him. But he's not that guy anymore. Or at least it appears like he's not. So, is this another example that PBC fighters were too protected? I mean, they're both PBC fighters. They're both PBC fighters. So I don't know how you. I don't know how you could use that logic. They're both PBC guys. I mean, Errol Spence is one of the top PBC guys, and Tim Tszyu was literally the guy that was the face of PBC on Amazon Prime's deal. He was the guy. He was in the headline of the first PBC on Amazon Prime show in the States. So I don't agree with that. Spence looked juiced. I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think so. And if he was juiced, then he needs to go find some better juice. Like, that wasn't it. I don't think he was juiced. Bro, 4 to 5 years ago, Tim would have done the same or worse to Errol. Styles make fights. This would have always happened, probably just worse 4 years ago. Maybe. I mean, we'll never know because they didn't fight. But, it was what it was. It was what it was. Happy trails to Errol Spence. And good luck to Tim Tszyu. Good luck to Tim Tszyu at 160 because, boy, is he going to need it, And I see a lot of you guys are saying that Errol Spence was protected by PBC. Now, I'm with you. I think they delayed the Terrence Crawford fight for way too long. I was the main one saying that Terrence Crawford was going to beat the dog shit out of him. And when they fought, I literally picked the fight to the very round. It was one of the easiest fights to ever predict in the history of this channel. That being said, I think two things can be true. Yes, he did marinate the Terrence Crawford fight, and he did go fight all the other guys within the PBC stable. But it wasn't like he didn't fight, really good fighters. So he fought Kell Brook in England, took his belt, fought one of the best, if not the best version of Sean Porter, beat him in a great fight. So I don't think it's fair to tear down Errol Spence either. Guys, I'm at a different stage of life now. I don't have the energy to put these fighters down like that. The guy went in there. He did do some really good things in the sport. He was a U.S. Olympian. And I tip my cap to him. I can say that about him. Now, do I think he was a special fighter? And to answer this guy's question, do I think Errol Spence Jr. has done enough to make it into the International Boxing Hall of Fame? Now, I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. Like in baseball, they say there's a Hall of Fame and there's the Hall of Very Good, And the Hall of Very Good is awesome. Like, if you're in the Hall of Very Good, it means you yourself are very good. But you're not like, Hall of Fame is supposed to be for the absolute creme de la creme of the entire history of the sport. And he's very good. I like Errol Spence. I think he's very good. Three belt champion, all that stuff. But to me, he's not a Hall of Famer. When I get a vote for the Hall of Fame, because I'm going to have a vote for the Hall of Fame at some point in time. If not, and it probably won't even be that far from now. I think I'm going to be a Hall of Fame voter sooner than you guys think. I'm not going to vote for Errol Spence. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer, but I don't think a lot of guys are Hall of Famers. A lot of guys that boxing fans think are Hall of Famers, I don't think are Hall of Famers. So, because for me, the Hall of Fame is supposed to be for the absolute creme de la creme best. And I'm not trying to put them down. I'm only stating facts. One of the things I judge about fighters, like when I determine greatness, is if a fighter has lost a fight in their career, I always look at, like, how do they respond to the loss. Now, when Errol Spence got his first loss, for whatever the reason may be, he took 3 years off, came back against a guy that really is not close to a Hall of Famer in himself and Tim Tszyu, and lost to Tim Tszyu. So, I mean, that, amongst other things, is why I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. But he did do a lot of great things in the sport, and I can't knock that, Tricks FTW, shout out to you for the super chat. He says, what are your thoughts on Tim Tszyu versus Jermell Charlo at 160? So you're asking me about Lil Charlo. I think that'd be an interesting fight. We don't necessarily know. And I feel like we're saying this with all the PBC guys. A lot of these guys are very inactive, so it's really hard to quantify what the hell they are half the time when they fight these days. The last time we saw Jermell, he fought Canelo, and he didn't really try to win. So So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if he's as shop one as Earl Spence, but Tim Tszyu is equally shop one, and you saw in this fight that he will give you opportunities to let you win the fight and win the fight and do what you want to do. So I don't really like, nor do I care, nor do I want that fight, to be honest with you. But if they make it, I understand it. Like, on this channel, for those of you who are new to this program, whenever I hear certain matchups, I'll say, that matchup sounds very Zuffa, or that matchup sounds very Top Rank, or very Turkey, or very Riyadh season, right? Shout out to Joel if you're in the chat, right? But when I say Tim Tszyu versus Jermell Charlo out loud at 160, that just sounds very PBC. So I could see it. I could see it happening, but it's not a fight that like I'm rushing to see or anything like that. Triv says Americans have never gave props for anything. His entire career, Spence was a favorite on all betting apps. Everyone favored win all documented Spence in 4. I mean, he won the fight. Like, he won the fight. I think it's a great building block fight for him. I've always given Tim Tszyu props. I love Tim Tszyu. In fact, I mean, I don't know if you're new around here, but I was covering Tim Tszyu before a lot of Americans. I was live on YouTube during his fight with Takashi Inoue, and a lot of his early fights before he even came to America. So no, I don't think that's fair to me if you're talking about me. But yeah, a lot of people picked Spence. I thought Spence had a chance to beat him, honestly, after I saw some pad work, but then seeing Errol Spence's how he was talking to Tim Tszyu, and some of his body language before the fight, I'm like, nah, Tim probably got it in the bag. But I mean, he did what he had to do. He won the fight, and God willing, this could be the kind of performance that gives Tim Tszyu some much needed confidence, because I think that's what he needs back. When I look at Tim Tszyu, I see a guy that's just lost his confidence. Because the Tim Tszyu that fought Tony Harrison, oh my God, oh my Lord, or even Mendoza, different guy. Do I think Tank or Shakur are in the Hall of Fame? I think Shakur Stevenson is a Hall of Famer. I don't think Tank's a Hall of Famer. I don't, but I do think Shakur's a Hall of Famer. And you can say, well, BT, the resumes are kind of comparable. But yeah, but Shakur scaled more divisions, and Shakur has an Olympic silver medal, and it's the Boxing Hall of Fame, not just the Pro Boxing Hall of Fame, but the Boxing Hall of Fame. So if you did stuff in the amateurs along with pro success, it helps you. So I think Shakur's a Hall of Famer, but people may not see it like that. I know there's a lot of Tank fans out there. There's this one guy, I forgot his name, but he's like a deranged Tank fan. And if he comes in here and he hears me talking like this, he's going to make himself very known in the chat. Shout out to Major Key Boxing. Give me a break, 2 to 3 sentence breakdown. I missed the fight. Peace and blessings. And shout out to everybody if you're waking up and you're just tuning in. Basically, it was two guys that are past their best. Errol Spence is a little more past it than Tim. Earl was trying to box and move at times in this fight, but that's not how he fights. He was caught in between two styles. He tried to maul Tim Tszyu, but that didn't work because, number one, this is not his weight class. Number two, he was falling over his front foot. Tim Tszyu had a lot of success landing the right hand and capitalizing on Errol Spence's lack of reflexes and just inactivity, right? He wasn't sharp, and his reflexes aren't what they used to be. So he landed a lot of right hands, but left a lot of spots in the rounds for Errol to close the gap and run the numbers and get off a lot of punches. So Errol was able to win some rounds. It wasn't a great fight, and Tim Tszyu did what he needed to do and landed the cleaner, harder, more effective punches, even though Errol Spence was very determined and did go the full 12 rounds. So that's my summary. That's my interpretation, and that's just what it is. What's y'all's interpretation of it? Because I really do feel like if Tim Tszyu, because I was counting it, I got pissed off after about 4 rounds. I'm watching Errol Spence and I'm watching his reflexes. I'm watching his back leg. I'm watching his base not be very stable. All I was waiting for was for Tim Tszyu to run the numbers, throw when you land a straight right hand, because he was landing a lot of them. Take a step forward, and let off 3 or 4 punches. Do that to Errol Spence and see what will happen, because he's not stable. His base is not stable, and just Tim wouldn't do it. Like Tim would land a right hand, he would admire his work, and that'd be it. And a handful of times where he would throw a body shot, every time he did it, he got Spence's attention. Errol would lower his guard, and Tim would not throw to the head after that. And it was frustrating to watch. So when I see that, I look at it as Tim Tszyu just doesn't have the confidence to do that anymore. But I might be wrong. He might just be not that far behind Errol Spence as being a shop-worn fighter because of the wars he's been in. So that's how I feel. Yeah, I feel like Shakur's Hall of Famer. What up, Joel? He's always fallen over his front foot. He's never been a reflex fighter. Tim has always been a calm forward measure fighter with very underrated reflexes. Exactly like you said, the Bakram fight took his soul. Yeah, because, I mean, obviously the Fundora fights were wars, especially the first one with the cut and where Fundora dragged him into hell. But that Bakram fight was different, because you got to remember, going into that fight, Bakram was unknown. Bakram was a guy that was fighting on dark shows. Bakram hadn't fought on actual TV for like 4 years, 4 or 5 years. He was just known as the guy that was Charlo's mandatory, who Charlo didn't fight, so Charlo could go fight Canelo, right? So Glenn Jennings, Tim Tszyu's manager and the former manager of Costa Tszyu, he put Tim Tszyu in there with Bakram because he felt like it was a tune-up, which in retrospect, from a managerial standpoint, not from like a boxing fan standpoint, but from a managerial standpoint, when you get a guy like Tim Tszyu who just came out of a hellacious war with Fundora where he got a cut, the last thing you want to do is put him in there with a freaking Chechnyan, angry Russian who's pissed off for greatness. And that's what they did. And you saw what happened. And I just remember Tim Tszyu's facial expression, how shocked he was that happened to him. And I actually think that fight, probably even more than either of the Fundora fights, that's what really did him in, was the Bakram fight. Definitely confidence, 1,000%. Well, yeah, I mean, Errol Spence is not a 60-pounder, so that's what Golovkin should have done, and I agree with Tim. Shout out to Hoops Combo. He says, BT, I have a feeling you'll be working for one of these big boxing promoters one day, doing a live TV broadcast. Well, look, a lot of you guys over the years have said, BT, would you do commentary? Would you want to do this? Would you want to do that? I've never said no. I've always said, if somebody comes knocking and the situation makes sense and they come correct with the compensation and things like that, I will consider it, because I love the fight game and I love the boxing fans, and I feel like the world does need more true school. But I've also always stated that, I love very much what I'm doing here. I love this channel and being myself and being able to talk how I want to talk, and I'm not sure network television is ready for BT, let's be real for a second. But why not? What the boxing world need to do, I'm going to tell you what the boxing world need to do. They need to go contact Sean Tatel, contact your boy BT, cut the check, and then you guys will have what you need in the commentary department. But why not, man? But until then, we're just going to keep building the channel up and giving you all the world-class boxing content you don't get nowhere else, because True School Sports is, the voice of the streets in boxing. It's the Smack DVD of boxing. He's on a mental rebound. If he gains another 20 to 30% confidence under Jeff Fennick, he will fulfill some of his potential, and he could get a second weight championship. Yeah, definitely just keep listening to Jeff Fennick. Jeff Fennick, I think, did a great job. I think he did the best he can with where Tim Tszyu was at, and I don't think you're ever going to get Tim Tszyu to fulfill his absolute potential. I'm not even sure. Like, people talk about his absolute potential. I don't believe Tim Tszyu's ceiling was as high as a lot of people think it was. He wasn't like he's a good action fighter. He can counterpunch. He had some good hand speed, but I never saw Tim Tszyu as like a pound for pound type guy. I've always seen him as a guy that could be maneuvered into a world title, be a great action fighter, be involved in some great fights that made him a lot of money, and those things are still true. So, we can definitely do that. BT, your time is certainly coming. I've been in the boxing for 40 years, for over 40 years, you're classy, respectful, and intelligent. I try, man. I give it the old college try, man. You know, I definitely give it a good try to come on here and be a good representative for boxing and my family and pops. And I think thus far we're doing a decent job. So thank you so much for the kind words. I'm gonna get to Pacheco and Joshua because a lot of y'all are asking about Pacheco and Joshua and all that stuff. So I'm gonna get to that in a second because I have a lot to say about not Pacheco, but Hamza Shiraz and his performance against Simon from Germany. And we're gonna circle back to some of my previous comments about Diego Pacheco. But while I'm doing that, before I get to that, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, super chat, all that good stuff. We're here. It's True School in the AM, True School After Dark, Coffee with True School, all that good stuff. So good to be here with you guys. Now, my man Tricks FTW for the win. He says, BT, how much more does Dave Benavidez need to do to be a Hall of Famer, or is he already a Hall of Famer? Now, that's a very interesting question because really and truthfully, David Benavidez, when you look at his career on paper, you're talking about the youngest super middleweight world champion in boxing history, right? Light heavyweight champion, now a cruiserweight champion. Now, I don't know who else has done it. I believe Benavidez might be the first fighter in boxing history to be a champion at 168, 175, and cruiserweight. Because if you guys remember, Roy Jones Jr., he did not he didn't win a world title at cruiserweight. Maybe James Toney might have done it. Y'all can correct me if I'm wrong. I know he beat Vasily Jirov, but I can't remember if he did a 168, 175, and cruiser. But if Benavidez isn't the only one, he's like one of two. So, I mean, he doesn't have like any great Hall of Fame names on his resume, but that's not entirely his fault. The one Hall of Famer in and around his weight that he could have fought was Canelo, and Canelo refused to give him that fight because Canelo was scary as hell, and he's still scary as hell, and he's still trying to justify not fighting Benavidez all these years later. He just did it the other day on the Ariel Helwani podcast. Honestly, if I had a vote and he retired right now, shit, I might give him a vote. I think he has a bigger case than Errol. He scaled more weight classes. He's been more dominant, I think so. All right. So let's pivot into it, man, because this is what y'all been waiting for. We'll get to AJ in a second, against Prenga. AJ was getting chopped up left and right. He was getting whooped in that first round against Prenga from Monday to Sunday, from Genesis to Revelations. He was getting the belt put on him. So we'll get to that in a second. And then he responded well in the second round. We'll get to that in a second. But we got to talk about Shiraz versus Simon from Germany. Simon Zalkubacher, whatever his name is. We'll just call him Simon from Germany because I'm not trying to say the German last name and butcher it, but we'll call him Simon from Germany, not to be confused with Simon Cowell from American Idol. All right. So y'all was going on for months. I've been hearing it for months on this channel. You guys been trying to tell me that I just don't understand what I'm watching and that Hamza Shiraz is this killer and this, that, and the third. I had Rick Glazer on here the other night, and I love Rick. I gotta return this call. He called me earlier, but Rick Glazer, he knows his boxing. I had Rick Glazer telling me that he's such this killer, and he would do this and that to Pacheco, and I'm like, what are y'all talking about? Like, do I not know boxing anymore? Does this prescription not work? I mean, I know I need new glasses, but does this prescription not work like it used to? I mean, shit, I know I need to get new glasses. I need to get a new prescription, but like, nah, man, I don't know quantum physics. I'm not, I could probably be a lot more well read up on my geopolitics and things like that. But one thing I know about is this boxing. And y'all ain't going to tell me about Hamza. I watched Hamza fight before he fought Adames. And I watched him in those early stages of his career when he was fighting like Tyler Denny and things like that. I watched him against Carlos Adames have a lot of problems controlling the range, really have to work for positioning, struggling. Adames is a skillful fighter, very skillful fighter. But if you followed Adames in his career, you know that he's always had weight problems, and you know that he always fades in the back half of fights. And I saw Hamza Shiraz as the younger fighter, weight drained or not, I saw him as a younger fighter fail to really push the pace and capitalize on that weakness of Adames. Then I saw him fight Emma Williams. And I saw Emma Williams, who does not have a high boxing IQ. He's just really explosive and punches really hard. but he does not have a high boxing IQ. He doesn't know his range either. And Hamza got hurt by him multiple times, and then ultimately he stopped him, so he'll get credit for that. And then after Ammo, he fought Berlanga, who a lot of you guys out there say is terrible, who you guys say sucks, who's a C-level fighter. A lot of y'all say he's a reggaeton artist. He's a joke. He's a clown. Okay, well, if he's a joke and he's a clown and he's a reggaeton artist, then why are you giving Hamza Shiraz all this credit for beating him, right? So that being said, even in that fight, the first 2 rounds, Berlanga was actually outboxing Hamza. He was actually having success outboxing Hamza. It wasn't until Hamza got in a high guard and closed the gap on him and, really started making him exchange that he had a success. So you guys kept telling me he's this killer. And what I saw was a guy who can punch. Yes, he is dangerous. I acknowledge those things. I'm not going to say he's weak or anything like that or acknowledge weaknesses. But I saw a guy that, as a tall man, can't fight consistently as a tall fighter, can be counterpunched because he doesn't move his head out the center line and struggles with any mobility and craft in that boxing ring, right? And so he fights this guy. He fights Simon from Germany, okay, 28-1. Very unknown. Didn't really have a whole lot of firepower. Did not have a lot of firepower, right? Didn't have a lot of that. All he really had was a nice pot shot left hand to the body. He really knew. One thing I can't say about Simon is one thing he did very well is after he punched, he made sure he'd move. He didn't just stay there and be a stationary target. When Hamza closed the gap on him, he pivoted. When Hamza closed the gap on him or he closed the gap on Hamza, he would throw body shots. So he was a good, solid pro. I'm not going to put the guy down. But for all the hype, for all the propaganda that Ring Magazine puts on your guys' Instagram feeds and your Twitter feeds and your Facebook feeds and your TikTok feeds and all your social media platforms, this was not what a lot of you guys were telling me he was. And circling back to a week ago when Diego Pacheco fought Emmanuel Alim, a lot of people were trying to downplay the fact that Diego Pacheco stopped Emmanuel Alim. Mind you, this is the same Emmanuel Alim who just took Lester Martinez, who's arguably the hardest puncher in the damn division, the distance, and made him look bad, right? This is the same Emmanuel Alim that has not been stopped for almost 10 years. And Pacheco became the first man to stop him since 2000, I believe, 17, right? And of course, Pacheco is not a finished product. Yes, you could say Pacheco ducked Hamza Shiraz and had the opportunity, but he was at least self-aware enough to know, hey, I need to fix some things. I don't look too good. I got to tighten some things up. I got to get a clearer identity, right? And so he did that. And with Buddy McGirt in that Alim fight, you saw a clear Diego Pacheco. You saw a guy who was more self-assured, more self-aware of who he is in the ring. You saw him using that range. You saw him have more of a direction on the inside. And his right hand looked like it's a little improved. Now, of course, he has to still correct some things mechanically with that right hand, but you saw direction. You saw improvement, right? And listen, I didn't need to see Hamza struggle with this guy from Germany. I've been telling you guys that Hamza Shiraz and Diego Pacheco, when you really study their careers, the totality of the careers, Pacheco is a better boxer technically than Hamza Shiraz. He has better pedigree than Hamza Shiraz. I'm talking about from the amateurs to now, okay? And with Buddy McGirt, it's gonna be some separation. Diego Pacheco is gonna beat Hamza when and if they ever fight. So now I'm glad that this fight happened. So now you guys can see that Hamza is not this killer, and he's not who Ring Magazine told you he is. All right, he's a good fighter. He's strong. He can punch a little bit, but there's a lot of things technically that he hasn't gotten right and cleaned up. And I've been telling you guys that even after the Berlanga fight. So I'm glad you've seen it. I'm glad people understand it now. Don't ever disrespect me again like that. What do you guys think? What are the boxing streets saying about this fight? Because another thing about Hamza too, like even before the later rounds, because Simon from Germany was picking up some rounds in the back half of that fight. And actually, one judge was very, one judge said one judge didn't like what he was seeing from Hamza. He won the fight by majority decision. So one judge actually had this fight a draw. So if you really want to get technical about it, Hamza Shiraz barely beat Simon from Germany. But you guys think he's going to beat Diego Pacheco. Come on, man. I know triangle theories don't work, but Diego Pacheco is a better boxer than Simon, has more with him than Simon. He can offset Hamza's reach. So Hamza, like, you know what's really telling about the fight? Like, scorecards aside, going the distance aside, it was in and around that 6th round, because around the 6th round, because the first 5 rounds, you saw Hamza on his toes, lead hand out, lead hand jousting, trying to fight tall, but he just didn't have the footwork or the know-how to deal with the southpaw movement and craft of Simon from Germany, right? So he got frustrated. I saw frustration. He made an adjustment, but the adjustment was made out of frustration and running out of ideas. He got in the high guard and he tried to walk down on Simon. That's what he did. And to me, that's a tell. What that tells me is that Hamza's his bag ain't that deep, and that he will struggle again with anybody who can box at a high level. So if I'm Hamza Shiraz, if I was in a management position, I'm not fighting Diego Pacheco, and I'm not fighting. I know who I'm not fighting. If I would try to fight someone like, obviously Canelo, if you can get Canelo, if he beats him Billy, that's a big fight in the UK. And that's a big money fight. So who cares if you win or lose, you're getting paid, right? But if you can't get Canelo, I would say go the Munguia route. Munguia boxed very well against Armando Resendiz, but I'm not really putting. And he looked great. I give Munguia all the credit. He looked great. But Jaime Munguia, that was against a guy with shorter arms. Hamza's a taller guy. I can't see Munguia boxing that same way. I think they'll exchange a lot more, which I think would bode better for Hamza, stylistically speaking. So I'm glad you guys see it now. I'm glad you guys see it. Pacheco ducked Hamza already. Nah. I mean, I'll give it to you. I'll say he ducked him, but he was self-aware. He knew he wasn't ready for that fight. Okay, he ducked him. That doesn't matter. Do you want to put it on Hamza's box rec? Do you want to put a green W? Do you want to put Diego Pacheco's name, put a green W? It doesn't matter. When they fight, Hamza's not going to be Diego Pacheco. And we talking about, and forget Diego Pacheco, I want to give some love to Jacob Bank, man. You know what? Jacob Bank has earned himself a True School Sports video. He should have got a True School Sports video already. But Jacob Bank was on this card. Jacob Bank is a ranked fighter in the WBO. They should have had Jacob Bank fight Hamza, right? I gotta watch him some more, but honestly, yeah, I do think you would have a chance against Hamza. I don't think Hamza is like that. I think he's a good fighter. To me, Hamza Shiraz is the Rafael Espinoza 168. Same shit, like same thing. But I'm gonna laugh at you guys. I'm gonna laugh at you guys when Pacheco fights these guys and he beats them. When he's gonna fight one of these guys one day, and you guys are gonna say, "Damn, it's gonna all be justified." Now, I'm not arguing with you. I do think he ducked those guys. There's no refuting. He ducked those guys. He was in position to fight them. But let's not lie to ourselves. He looked like dog shit against Kevin Lesajo. If he's the one in the ring, if he felt like, you know what, there's some things I got to work on before those kind of fights, then fuck it. Let him work on those things. Can't please boxing fans. Nah. He's not as good as Fundura. I don't even, honestly, I give Rafael Espinoza a hard time because I feel like he's ducking everybody at 168. And Zanford Promotion steers him away from anybody who can punch at 126. But to be honest with you, I can't even call him Espinoza of 168 because, see, when Espinoza fights guys like Simon Zalbacher, he puts them in the dirt. When he fought Edward Vasquez, he put him in the dirt. When he fought Arnold K. guy, he put him in the dirt. He don't go the distance with these caliber of fighters. So I can't even call him that as much as I want to give Espinoza a hard time. Yeah. Yeah, and you know what? Like, I mean, I might have to actually go back and score that fight because I wasn't scoring the fight. I was actually on the phone with Sean Tatel for like 9 rounds of that fight, and we were laughing our asses off because a lot of y'all gave us a hard time for just telling you that Pacheco versus Hamza is a good fight, and that Pacheco will have a chance to beat Hamza when they do fight. And now you see it. You should have been seeing it. You should have been seeing it when he fought Adames. You should have been seeing it when he fought Emma Williams. But no, y'all, a lot of y'all let Ring Magazine brainwash you to think that he was this killer. And y'all do that with a lot of fighters. A lot of these fighters who got these Ring Magazine ambassador deals, where they're being shoved down your throats on social media. Y'all believe Ring Magazine, and Ring Magazine ain't the Ring Magazine of now ain't the Ring Magazine of yesteryear. But to be fair, Kevin Lesajo will give a lot of guys at 168 a hard time. And let's be real, and let's be frank about it. The Adames fight was at 160, right? Who has Hamza fought at 168 better than Kevin Lesajo? Because personally, like I like Edgar Berlanga. I fuck with Edgar Berlanga, but like I don't think Edgar Berlanga is better than Kevin Lesajo, and I don't think Edgar Berlanga will beat Kevin Lesajo. You know, so I'm gonna leave it at that. Give a lock for tomorrow. That's a good question. What's tomorrow's locks? Locks. What you got? Hitchens versus Salas. You got Berlanga versus Butler. I will go with. Is that a lock? What I really call that a lock? I would say Hitchens versus Salas. Maybe Hitchens on points. You know, but I don't know if I'd call that a lock. You know, Carlos Salas is pretty damn tough, and yeah, I don't know. It's actually the Zuffa card later on today, because I can't even say tomorrow because it's 3:18 in the morning. All right, it's 3:18 in the morning, so I can't even say today. But the Zuffa card later on tonight in New York, it's some good fights, man. A lot of people. I didn't really like the Butler versus Berlanga fight at first, but as I really went into my tape study, and as I really started to really marinate on that matchup, man, Berlanga versus Butler is gonna be a great fight, because Edgar needs to, in this fight with Butler, he needs to box. He needs to box. If he wants to get a knockout, he's not gonna get the knockout going for the knockout. He's gonna get the knockout if he boxes. If he go in there and he start exchanging with this angry, long rangy Canadian, Edgar Berlanga might get flatlined tomorrow, guys. Butler may not have a lot of skills. Butler has a chin made out of lavender and glass, but Butler can punch. He can punch a hole in you. So can Berlanga, of course. So that's the kind of fight that Zuffa Boxing wants to make. Zuffa Boxing wants to make these Rock'em Sock'em Robots type of fights. So, that's a good fight. Hitchens to Salas is a good fight. My fight tomorrow that I'm looking forward to on that card is on the prelims. You know, I'm really excited to see my South Florida's very own Dominique Trap Francis. You know, he's finally getting a big platform after all these years grinding. You know, from North Miami Powell to now. You know, all these years training in Boca Raton with Derek Santos. You know, I remember meeting Dominique in 2019 when he was 2-0, and now he's 16-0. That was 7 years ago. We go back some years. So I want to see the South Florida fighters do well. He's taking on Hector Sosa. It's very intriguing to me because Hector Sosa is a guy that I wanted Angelo Leo to fight as a voluntary defense. We obviously couldn't get it. But he's very experienced. You know, he's knocked out Jazza Dickens, and he's fought Luis Nunez, and who else has he fought? He fought Omar Trinidad, right? So it's a good fight for Trap, for Trap Francis. For Trap Francis, if he could win this fight, I think it puts his name on the map, you know, on a good platform like Zuffa Boxing. So I mean, to be honest with you, I don't got any locks for tomorrow. I don't, but I think it's a good card. But shout out to all 91 of you here. Make sure you go ahead and smash that like button. We're here. It's True School After Dark. We're through our first hour here, so. You know, if you're in England, if you're in Australia, if you're in the other parts of the world where it's the afternoon, where it's the morning, definitely go ahead and make your presence felt. Comment down below, hit the like button, subscribe, super chat, and just thank you guys for joining us, man. I appreciate all the love and support from all the fine folks out here. Yeah, Joel, because I was trying to be nice. You know, I try my best, man. You know, because God giveth and God taketh away, right? I believe in that. You know, that's why I listen to is the Lord, right? So I try to be humble, but sometimes when you just know, you know. And when y'all was telling me that Hamza is this and Hamza is that, and I'm like, no, y'all think he's this, but he's not really that. You know, he's not that. He's a good fighter. He's a good little fighter. And y'all are believing the Ring Magazine propaganda and drinking the Ring Magazine guava Kool-Aid. But I'm not drinking it. I'm not buying what they're selling me. Good little fighter. You know? And you know what? You know, I really hate to be like, I hate to be wearing the tinfoil hat and discredit people's wins. But man, I saw Hamza Shiraz hit this German guy with some good shots, real good shots. And they didn't do anything. But when he hit Edgar Berlanga, like Edgar was ready to levitate into the eighth dimension. This guy was having out of body experiences every time Hamza touched his ass. So I'm not going to sit here and say that, you know, Hamza definitely had plaster in his gloves, but, you know, kind of makes it look a little bit less crazy now. Yeah, he said that to me on the phone as well when we were talking during the fight. Maybe he might have injured his hand, but nah, man, you a world champion. You the killer of the division. When you fight in a southpaw, that can't punch, and all you need to do is win the battle of positioning, you do that and knock him the fuck out. That's what you do, because you the killer of the division. And you didn't do that. You look very limited and you barely beat the guy. If that. Maybe you didn't even beat him. I didn't score the fight round by round, but maybe you didn't even beat him. And maybe that judge that gave you 6 rounds, maybe he was being generous to you. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go back and rescore that fight. I gotta go watch that fight. You know? Now my man right here says stop hating on Zuffa. I don't hate Zuffa. You know? I don't hate Zuffa. I just point out facts about the ways that Dana White has ran the UFC and the ways they're going to try to run boxing. Now, look, if they're putting on good shows, I got no problem saying that they're putting on good shows. I think today's show with Berlanga and Hitchens and Dominique Francis and all these guys, I think it's a good show, and I'm going to watch it. It's actually the card I'm most excited about this weekend. But for me, like I told you guys many times, I do have my opinions on Zuffa, but I'm giving them a 15-show grace period. 15 shows. This is Zuffa Box number 9. I think by the time we get to the 15 show, we should have seen enough developments that, you know, maybe that bill has a resolution through Congress here in the U.S. I feel like that's when I can really judge Zuffa, when we finally get the conclusion of the Ali Act going through Congress and all that stuff. You know? And as far as the AJ fight, because a lot of y'all are talking about the AJ fight, AJ. Now, I haven't watched the stoppage back. You know, a lot of people give me a hard time because I was like, yeah, I feel like they waved the fight off too soon. Because when I watched the fight live on you know, when it was going on, AJ dropped Prenga in the second round, and around the 6 count, when the referee got to 6, I already saw AJ's team jumping in the ring, and I saw Prenga making an effort to try to get up, and they just waved the shit off. I don't think they should have waved it off. I think they should have counted the full 10. So I'll go watch back. Maybe I'm tripping, but either way, I'm gonna say it like this with AJ. The Tyson Fury fight that they're trying to angle for is a cash grab. I think it's even worse that they're trying to put that fight in America, because let's be real, you know, shout out to the Stars and Stripes. Here in the land of the free, in the home of the brave, we don't care about AJ versus Fury. And I think it's very disrespectful to the great fans of British boxing that always support, that always get behind their fighters, that always make these atmospheres great, whether it be in boxing or the World Cup and soccer, anything. They do a great job in supporting their own, right? And these guys have been two of the biggest flag bearers, if not the 2 biggest flag bearers for British boxing over the last 10 years. These guys have a responsibility. I don't even want to say they owe it, but they got a responsibility to deliver this fight to the British public. And if they don't, and they put it in America, not only is it stupid, not only is it retarded, but it's inexcusable. It's absolutely inexcusable. And Anthony Joshua didn't have great punch resistance when he was in his prime. It's even worse now. Christian Prenga, he had Christian Prenga in there looking like the Albanian Andy Ruiz. So, yeah, you know, credit to him. He showed a lot of heart. Obviously, he was going through a lot of things in his personal life with the accident and the passing of his friends. So, you know, God bless him for getting through that troubling time and overcoming that adversity, as well as the adversity that Prenga was giving his ass in the first round. But I mean, If A, like I've said many times, and I'll pair what I've been saying about AJ, if he's gonna be in fighting, the only fight I want to see him in is the only fight I want to see him in is freaking Deontay Wilder. That's a real rivalry fight. I feel like the Fury fight at this stage is a safe fight. Like they're both from the UK. They're both gonna have the old-fashioned British manners no matter what happens. But like with Fury and or with Joshua and AJ, like there's real history there. Like that was supposed to be the first undisputed fight in boxing in the, her first heavyweight undisputed fight. Both guys, had rabid fan bases. I feel like I spent so much time talking about that damn fight. And I want a resolution, one way or the other. I could live without seeing Fury or an AJ fight, but I'd rather see AJ versus Wilder fights. The UK versus the USA. They both don't have great chins. They both, can still punch. Why not? Let's get a resolution. Let's see what was really what back then. That's kind of where I stand. But I don't got much to say about AJ. AJ's AJ. AJ's an entertaining fighter. Don't got great punch resistance, and it is what it is. So, yeah, that's all I can say about the AJ fight. He says, y'all trying to get Angelo some bums off the street. Well, hey, at least you guys couldn't. You can dollar the guys who you guys couldn't. You can dollar the guys who can get easy pick'ems. Well, I mean, Hector Sosa, if you want to just be honest about it, right? Hector Sosa knocked the fuck out of Jazza Dickens. Jazza Dickens went on to become a world champion, right? He fought Luis Nunez as one of the top contenders at featherweight, tooth and nail. Luis Nunez was laboring to get to that fight if you go back and you watch it. So, yeah, while it would have been a much easier fight, he's not no pushover. It would have been a good voluntary defense. Now, Angelo is the – and I don't want – honestly, guys, I'm just going to be honest with you. Like, I'm going to be blunt. I don't really want to talk about Angelo right now. I don't want to talk about Angelo right now. So this is all I'll say to this comment. Angelo is the only fighter in the division that has never had a voluntary defense. All right. Bruce Carrington just had his first voluntary defense. Brandon Figueroa is about to have his first voluntary defense. What's his name? Rafael Espinoza has had like 4 voluntary defenses, right? Every champion should get a voluntary defense. He's never had a voluntary defense his whole career, Everybody he's defended against has either been a undefeated guy or former world champion. That is a fact. That can't be refuted or disputed. And funny enough, right, on Twitter, when I heard that Devin Haney was fighting Keyshawn Davis, I asked the question and I said, hey, Devin Haney is fighting. He just fought undefeated Brian Norman Jr. He's now about to fight undefeated Keyshawn Davis. When was the last time somebody in boxing fought 2 back-to-back undefeated Black American fighters? I asked that question. I wanted to see how much people knew about boxing because I didn't get the answer I was looking for. Because the answer to the question was, apart from Devin Haney, who was about to do it, the last guy that did it was actually Angelo Leo. He fought Tremaine Williams, who was 19-0, undefeated, on short notice, beat him, and then he fought Stephen Fulton. And yes, he lost Stephen Fulton, but it was a great fight. They threw 1,993 punches, which is the third most combined punches ever thrown in a championship fight at 122 pounds. So he fought more top competition than all the guys at featherweight put together. So yeah, if he wanted to fight Hector Sosa, if we wanted to get a voluntary defense against a whatever fighter in the rankings, so be it. Every fighter gets it. We're not Rafael Espinoza, who gets it every fight. Espinoza gets it every fight. Bruce Carrington shouldn't even be a world champion right now. The guy literally has the same resume as Albert Chop Chop Gonzalez, but y'all don't want to talk about that. How high do you think? And shout out to everybody here. Y'all can ask whatever y'all want. Go ahead and ask whatever y'all want. But yeah, whatever you do right now. I'm not gonna talk about the featherweights. I don't want to talk about Angelo or the featherweights. I'm kind of just tired of it. So I'm gonna I'm not talking about no more. I said what I needed to say. I'm gonna leave it at that. No more Angelo talk. But Who's Convo says, how high do you think Moses Atama's ceiling is? I think we're gonna find that out come August 29th, man, when he fights Philip Hrgovic. You know, a lot of people are already crowning Moses and just saying like, "Oh, well, BT, just know that your Hrgovic is gonna get stopped." And I'm like, "No, I'm not doing that because Moses, the best guy he's fought is fucking Jermaine Franklin, and with all due respect to Jermaine Franklin, who's a good pro, who's tough." He's not a world class heavyweight. Philip Hrgovic is, and Philip Hrgovic is one of the most experienced heavyweights in the division. So we're going to see what Moses really has come August 29th, and we'll know from there. But if we're just talking about what we've seen so far, Moses has incredible talent, you know, and I know people in the British boxing world that have seen him spar a world champions and big names, like big heavyweight names, and beat the dog shit out of them. I've gotten crazy reports back about Moses Thomas from my people in the UK, and I've just heard the craziest things about him. So based on what I've heard and based on what I've seen, he looks like he's the goods, but we're going to see come August 29th. I think if I'm going off of what I see from a skill standpoint, he looks like the next great heavyweight, but you don't really know until a guy gets taken to those deep, dark places. And I think this is the fight where we're going to see him potentially go there. And if not, and if it's not, and he stops Hrgovic early, then let him fight for a world title next. Benavidez can't beat Jai. I mean, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. I definitely think he could beat Jai. I mean, Jai Alpataya has already gotten his jaw broken by Marius Briedis. I think David Benavidez is more than capable of doing the same thing, and vice versa. I think Jai could beat the shit out of David. I think it's one of them kind of fights. But when they do fight, Benavidez by stoppage. Jai is a good fighter, but y'all be doing too much for Jai. You know, talking about it is fun. It's funny to me. It's just so funny to me. Like all these new Jai Alpataya fans. Like I'm an actual Jai Alpataya fan. Like I've been doing videos about Jai Alpataya since like 2022, right? And you know, the only people that care about Jai are the Samoans that comment on the videos. You know, all these new American Jai Alpataya fans that are rallying around it just because Benavidez is growing in popularity and they don't want to see him do well just because they want to be contrarians and be boxing hipsters. You know, it's funny to me, but it's a good fight. I hope it can happen at some point. Um, I don't think he's ducking Jai. In fact, forget Jai fighting Benavidez. Jai better get ready to fight Eddie Hearn in court. You know, Eddie Hearn's lawyers in court with all the Zuffa boxing stuff, with all them lawsuits coming his way. He better go win that fight. Y'all talking about him fighting Jai. He need to go win the fight versus Matchroom Boxing LLC in court in Zuffa Boxing in the IBF. He needs to go win that fight. Shout out to the Nobody 92 with the super chat. He says, was Thurman, Spence, and Garcia all PBC hype jobs? Now, in my opinion, I'm gonna rank all them guys from 1 to 3. I think the best fighter of that bunch was definitely Keith One-Time Thurman. Because number one, Keith Thurman beat Danny Garcia, right? And he also beat Sean Porter. And when Keith Thurman was the man of the division, I felt like that was actually the best time when the welterweight division was exciting. He fought all the guys that, people that were the top guys. Now people say like, well, he ducked Errol Spence, and you can say that, but like, as long as you say Terrence Crawford ducked Jaron Ennis, just keep it consistent because that's basically what that was to him at the time. Spence was the upcoming guy who was high risk, low reward at that point, right? And Keith Thurman lost to Manny Pacquiao. If he would have got the decision over Manny Pacquiao, Thurman would have fought Spence. That's why they had Thurman in the ring with Pacquiao in the first place, and vice versa. If Spence would have fought Pacquiao, which he didn't because of the eye injury, he would have fought Thurman. So it's one of those fights that just wasn't meant to be. But I do think Keith Thurman was a better fighter than Errol Spence, and he had a better welterweight run than Errol Spence. Errol Spence is number 2 because he also beat Danny Garcia. And I would say Thurman, Spence, Garcia. And the funny thing with Thurman and Spence is that their careers and the perception of their careers is widely shaped by Floyd Mayweather, right? Because Keith Thurman was Floyd Mayweather's mandatory for years. Years. He was the WBA mandatory, and he was at the press conference talking about we're gonna burn money, you know. And if you guys remember, the genesis of Errol Spence's popularity and fame in boxing stems from Floyd Mayweather. It stems from the sparring session, but it also stems from those interviews outside the Mayweather gym where Floyd was bigging up Errol Spence and talking about how Keith Thurman has to fight Errol Spence. And that's actually what springboarded Errol Spence's popularity. But people forget about that as the years go by. So, yeah, I mean, it would have been great to see Thurman fight Spence, but I would say Thurman was the best of the bunch. Danny Garcia, to me, was always overrated. You know, of those three fighters, to me, he was the most overrated because he had a great run at 140, and I won't take that from him. He had an amazing run at 140 pounds. But once he got to 147, he plateaued. He won a vacant belt against Robert Guerrero. And every fighter he fought at 47, that was an elite fighter, he looked good losing, but he still lost, you know? You understand? So to me, he was an expensive gatekeeper at 147 pounds. In fact, I remember when Danny Garcia fought Errol Spence, one of the big talking points from the Errol Spence fan base and a lot of people was that, hey, you know, Errol Spence, he could have taken the tune-up. You know, for this fight, but he didn't take a tune-up. He decided to fight Danny Garcia, right? And I was like, no, you guys got it all fucked up. You guys got it all messed up. Errol Spence is fighting a tune-up, all right? Just because you know his name and he's mainstream, he's a tune-up. At 147, at that point in time, he was a tune-up because Danny Garcia didn't beat. Like, Danny Garcia's best win at 147 pounds is stopping my boy Adrian Granados, who I love. That's my guy. Love him to death. But Adrian Granados at 147 pounds is a gatekeeper himself. You understand? He was a 140-pounder, right? So I hope that answers your question. If you think David should fight Jai, then Boots should fight Virgil Ortiz. Yeah, I think all that should happen. I think all the top guys should fight each other. David has been ducking Jai for 2 years now, bro. How can he be ducking Jai, bro? Jai, literally over the last 2 years, and even before that, Jai's had promotional problems. Eddie Hearn, bro. Jai, when they were trying to do Jai Opataya versus Chris Smith on the undercard of Eubank versus Ben, they wouldn't even put up the money for both guys. They gave both fighters a $1 million budget. That's not enough money for them two to fight. Okay, they wouldn't even put up money to get him to fight Chris Smith. He's now in a lawsuit he's now about to be in a lawsuit with the IBF and Zuffa, and Eddie Hearn's about to sue his ass too. Jai has fights to win outside the ring. Y'all are talking about fights inside the ring. He has fights outside the ring that are preventing him from even being his best self to get a Benavidez fight. So I don't agree with that. But to each their own. Yeah, I mean, Danny Garcia at that point in time was on top of the world because at that point in time, you know, he knocked out Amir Khan. He beat Matisse, and they brought him to Puerto Rico against a very light punching, but very crafty, very skillful Mauricio Herrera. And he was supposed to knock him out and look great and drum up some interest in the Puerto Rican boxing market, which we all know would have greatly benefited his career. In fact, Danny Garcia was, at the time, he was endorsed by Jordan Brand. Like, he was one of the few fighters over the last, 10, 15 years that had a Jordan Brand endorsement deal. Go look it up. Danny Garcia had a Jordan Brand endorsement deal. And after that fight, after he looked bad, he never reached those levels of hype or stardom again. Even though he was a big name, even though he had a big fan base and still was in some really important fights and did great numbers and got paid very well, that fight changed the whole course of his career. So you're not wrong for that. The industry is trying to hold Jai down to protect the hype jobs. Nobody's holding him down. What I'm trying to tell you is nobody's holding Jai Opataya down. First of all, in 2022 or 2023, he got into a lawsuit with his Australian promoter. That held him back, right? He was with Matchroom. y'all gotta put some blame on Turkey. Y'all do all this talking and capping for Turkey all shit like he's the savior of the sport. I don't know if you're one of those guys, Hawker, but I'm saying a lot of people they do all this stuff about Turkey this and Turkey that, bro. Turkey all Sheik should have pumped enough money behind Japatai to do the Chris Miller Smith fight. That would have helped him out. He ain't do that. Okay, so he deserves some blame. And then I don't know who told Jai that it was a great idea to sign a Zuffa Boxing. It's clear to see that he doesn't have any honest people on his team, because if he had honest people on his team, he would have told them, hey, this is going to conflict with you having the IBF belt. So if your true ambition is to get all these other sanctioning body belts, going to a promoter that isn't trying to work with the sanctioning bodies and is trying to eradicate the sanctioning bodies just isn't going to work. So he got bad advice. He took that bad advice, and you make your bed, you lie on it. So nobody's holding him back. He's holding himself back by his own decisions. You understand? I haven't talked about it because I haven't watched it. I didn't watch the whole card because I was running some errands earlier in the day. I did see that Rachel won again, so good for Rachel. But man, to the fine folks at Riyadh Season or whoever the hell is in charge, stop boxing Reito Tsutsumi in Saudi and the USA. That time has came and gone. Let the man fight at home. Let the man fight in Japan. I just seen that Zuffa Boxing has struck a partnership deal with the fine folks at Unext Boxing. It's a big platform in Japan. They just did the big triple header world title fights with Ken Shiro and Shokichi Wada, Riku Masuda. They have big viewership in Japan. It's monumental for them to get that in Japan, breaking into the Japanese market. Let that man line some shows on Unext, man. I'm tired of seeing Reito Tsutsumi buried on these Saudi cards. And I remember when I was there in Japan in 2024, before he even turned pro, I actually met Reito Tsutsumi at the Ota City General Gymnasium when his brother Hayato fought. I was there on New Year's Eve. And I just remember back around that time, there was so much hype around him and his career. And he was the most hyped up Japanese fighter there was. And I just feel like even though he's gaining notoriety, his profile is doing good on Instagram, he's getting his followers, it just doesn't feel like the hype is where it needs to be for a prospect of his caliber. And I think a big part of that is because this man is fighting in Saudi, in America, buried on the prelims of these cards. And I don't like it, man. I feel like he's good enough to definitely headline some shows in Japan already, or at least come in and event some shows in Japan already. That's where I'm at with it. I don't think it was bad to have Angel Garcia around. Hold on a second, guys. I think Angel Garcia took Danny as far as possible, as he possibly could have. But for me, like once Danny moved to 47, so I mean, after that Herrera fight, once he was talking about going to 47, that's when Danny should have gotten a new trainer or gotten some help and adapted his style to 47, because once he fought guys that could take his punches, and and Danny couldn't just be this big counter puncher anymore and knock guys out. He couldn't win fights. He couldn't cut it against the elite at 47. So that's how I feel. Yes, Joel. Yes. Reito Susumi is very Zuffa, and I don't like it. Speaking as somebody who, as you see the Japanese flag, I love the country, and I'll be back there in September. So shout out to Japan. I can't wait to be back there. But speaking as somebody who loves Japanese boxing and follows it very, very closely, I don't like how he's been moved so far. It's pissing me off, because he really is a top talent, and I feel like he's not getting the shine he really deserves. And I don't think being very Zuffa is good for certain fighters. I don't think being very Zuffa is good for him. But we'll see. Only time will tell. BT, could you see Kenshiro Taraji unifying with Maloney and then Yabuki moving up for the trilogy? Well, he's got to beat Maloney. Maloney, I think Kenshiro can beat Maloney. I still think Kenshiro's lost about a step and a half, but I think him losing a step and a half is actually a good thing, because it's going to make Kenshiro have to box more, which I think is great for him, because Kenshiro does have one of the best jabs in boxing. But over the last, 2 or 3 years, he's become this guy that just wants to go to war, and he wasn't always like that. He used to box guys. He used to paint dudes up with the jab and knock them out with the right hand late in the later parts of the fights. And he's gotten away from that. So I think it's good that he's declined because it's going to force him to use his smarts and his brain and his jab a lot more. I think he should beat Maloney, but it's not a gimme fight. If he beats Maloney, could Yabuki move up? It depends. Yabuki is going to have probably a tough mandatory coming up with Mael Fajardo. If he takes that fight, I don't know, man. That's going to be a hard one. So we shall see. Do I think Benavidez has enough big name opponents and he can fight to become the face of boxing? And what are those opponents that could skyrocket his profile? Good question. Hell of a question. From like a branding standpoint, I think the biggest fight for him, as stupid as it's gonna sound to you guys, is actually Ben Whitaker. I think the Ben Whitaker fight is bigger than Beterbiev. I think it's even bigger than Bivol because Ben Whitaker has a massive profile on social media. A lot of casuals follow him, and I know that sounds stupid, but yeah, I think Ben Whitaker is the biggest fight out there from as far as like his name. Now we're talking about legacy. If we're talking about like accomplishments, man, if he can get Artur Beterbiev on his resume and stop him, that to me would actually, in my eyes, make him a unquestionable Hall of Famer. If he fights Beterbiev and knocks him out, I don't even care if Beterbiev's 41. That's still Beterbiev, and nobody stopped him. So, I don't know if there really is a fight that could skyrocket his profile. Like, the only guy with a big name at light heavyweight is or in and around his weight is really Ben Whitaker. Opataya is a really good fighter. He's definitely a pound for pound or fringe pound for pound guy, but he's not a big name like that, right? Beterbiev and Bivol are known in the hardcore box community, and if you watch boxing, you know those names, but they're not big names either. That's why it took so long for them to fight, because they weren't big names that could command the kind of money for them to fight in 2020 or 2021 or 2022. So I don't know. I think for Benavidez, he just needs to continue kicking ass. It'll be his body of work that makes him a superstar, not one singular fight. That fight would have been Canelo, but Canelo didn't want to fight him. And Canelo continues to justify that to this day. Oh, honestly, I'm kind of hoping he takes the Ben Whitaker fight, because I don't like these boxing intelligentsia hipsters. Like, y'all don't like Jael Pataya like that. Like, y'all don't like Jael Pataya. I know you don't like Jael Pataya because I cover Jael Pataya. I like Jael Pataya. Y'all don't like Jael Pataya like that. Y'all just hate David, and Opataya is your flavor for the moment. And I don't believe that y'all really care for Jael like that. So just for the shits and giggles, I hope David fights Ben Whitaker. It'll be a good time here on YouTube. But of course, I want to see him fight Jai as well. I don't know if I like it. I don't know if I like it. And I don't really think the Japanese boxing market needs outside influences. Like, the Japanese boxing market is the only self-sufficient boxing market in the world. They already did 50,000 plus without, like, Juzo and Inoue are both from Japan. They didn't need America for that. They did that on their own. They have a good structure with the Cork and Hall shows. Fighters stay very, very busy and very active in Japan. For the most part, they don't need Dana White in Japan, but I guess it'll be interesting. I mean, as long as these guys get treated fairly, I'm happy. Just whatever you do, stay away from my boy Yugo Saki. Don't go on there paying him $5 and ruining his career. I'm trying to see my boy become what I know he is, which is a superstar. They said, you want Ben Whitaker to get murdered on live TV? Well, I mean, Ben Whitaker is talking about the fight. Benavidez is talking about the fight. Those are clearly two of the biggest names in and around the weight. You can refuse to believe it. You can hate on it, but it's the truth. And they're probably gonna fight each other at some point. Why do you say that? Why? I mean, I wasn't always the biggest Benavidez guy. I used to say all the time, he beats the smaller guys, but he's fought plenty of. And I know you guys are gonna hate and poke holes to this, so feel free to do so. But like Caleb Plant was a top fighter, he fought Caleb Plant. He fought Demetrius Andrade, who Canelo Alvarez ducked across multiple weight classes for God knows how many years. A lot of y'all hate Boo Boo. Well, guess what? The guy that beat Boo Boo and exposed them, so to speak, was Benavidez, right? So give him a little credit for that. He was undefeated. He was a two-division champion. He was a U.S. Olympian. He was an amateur world champion as well. Not no bum fighter. So, he beat Boo Boo. Once upon a time, thank God my memory is long. Once upon a time, a lot of the same people that are, drinking the Jai Pattaya Kool-Aid, a lot of y'all were talking about Benavidez ducking David Morrell. That was a thing at one point. How stupid is that? How dumb does that sound now? All these years later, seeing how Morrell's performing against Hot Rod and Zach Chelly, so he's fought good people. Boxing fans are just miserable. Zolder Ramirez, you can say whatever you want about Zolder Ramirez. Zolder Ramirez was a legitimate unified champion of the cruiserweight division, and he beat the shit out of him in like 6 rounds in one of the best performances you're ever going to see. So he's fought good people. How many female fighters do you think you could spar and beat, and don't give us a political answer? I think I could beat anybody. Anybody. It's quite, a lot. But guys, I'll be honest with you. I'm not really trying to talk about women's boxing too much, man. Like all respect to the ladies in boxing doing their thing, but it's just not. It's not really my thing anymore. Like to talk about women's boxing. Like I think as you get older, you mature, you see the world differently than you did 10 years ago, 7 years ago, 5 years ago. I don't like women's boxing. I don't like it. I feel like they've got what they needed out the sport. Like they're getting paid more. Probably getting paid too damn much because now you got girls ducking fights like Alicia Baumgartner. So maybe they have made it. They can duck fights now, like Alicia Baumgartner is doing with Caroline Dubois. The only women's fighters I care about is Clarissa Shields, Michaela Mayer. What's her name? I can't remember her name, but yeah, I don't really care for the sport, women's boxing. I love my chances. I mean, I'm not that far removed from sparring 25 rounds and against professional fighters in the Angel Leo camp. So I mean, I like my chances, man. She's a dog. She's a dog. I feel like that's the fight that's gotta happen. I feel like that's the fight that's gotta happen. For being honest, we could sit here, we could fix a lip and say, oh well, Demetrius Andrade should fight Christian and Billy or Lisa Iglesias or Pacheco. But let's be real, those promotional teams and managers are probably not going to fight Demetrius Andrade. Jamal Charles at the end of his career, Andrews at the end of his career. They got a lot of history together. I feel like that's the fight to make. So to answer your question, hell yes, 1,000%. I don't see why it can't happen. Let Andrade knock out another stiff, get people more excited. Let Charlo get another win, and should do that next year in the first quarter of 2027. Why not? He got me. You stopped caring for boxing once Nisa Strata retired. Be honest. Nah, to be honest with you, that's not true. I stopped caring about women's. I'll tell you guys the exact moment I stopped caring about women's boxing. I stopped caring about women's boxing around early 2023 because that's when I started to rev up my Japanese boxing coverage. I had always covered the Japanese. I always made it a point to cover the Japanese fighters when I could, like Inoue and Kenshiro and Kosai Tanaka and Shinsuke Yamanaka. But like I really said, you know what? Nah, this is really fun. I'm really enjoying it. I'm getting a lot of joy out of it. People are enjoying it, and something has to get sacrificed. You can't do everything. So I was like, okay, well, fuck it. I'm gonna sacrifice my women's boxing coverage because I just didn't care about. I really was, because it got to a point where like a lot of the women's fighters, they just complain. Women just they just complain about everything. Like you guys are getting paid. You guys are on TV. Like what more do you want? Like you see it in other sports. You see it with the WNBA. The NBA subsidizing the WNBA to keep them alive, and they still complain. You understand? So it's like, I don't know, man. Outside of a handful of fights, I just don't. I'll be honest, I don't care for it. No, I don't. I don't hate Chris Mannix. Nah, credit to him. May they live a happy life together. I don't care about that. Good for him. You know, y'all really don't think that I can get women that look as good, if not better, than the great Tanisha Estrada. With all due respect, like, I do pretty good for myself. Quiet as kept. Um, just for answering that, yeah, well, I appreciate it, champ. I appreciate it. I try to be a man of the people. And look with women's boxing, right? And this is my last comment about women's boxing, because we not trying to talk about women's boxing. If y'all want to go hear about women's boxing, go to other channels, right? And I respect women's fighters. The first gym I ever trained at was Canino's boxing gym. It was ran by women, right? So I actually do respect women's fighters. It's just that the current climate of women's boxing just ain't for me, and I don't want to pretend to care about it. That's just the God's honest truth. But I don't like 3-minute rounds. Women's boxing is not good when there's 3-minute rounds. When they gave Amanda Serrano, who's one of the hardest punchers in women's boxing, 3-minute rounds, she wasn't punching like that no more. Women's boxing is great is as great as it possibly can be with 2-minute rounds, because they got to start faster. They got to be volume punchers. Biologically speaking, women don't punch as hard as men. So them being volume punchers makes their fights more watchable and entertaining. You understand? So I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to talk no more about women's boxing. Yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there. I'll be there. I'll be there for the fight. I'm looking forward to seeing Charles Conwell in a back in action against a good veteran and Paul Crow. We'll see what he can do, man. We'll see what he has left. I don't like to condemn fighters for losing. That's why fighters don't want to take certain fights, because y'all be condemning them when they lose, and they're like, "Damn, I don't want to take the damn fight because nobody's gonna give a fuck about me if I lose." So we'll see what he has left. He was a guy that people thought could be world champion. I still think that Matchroom Boxing, or not Matchroom, Golden Whip Promotions will probably maneuver him into a Virgil Ortiz fight at some point, because that was the whole point of them. Definitely signing him. She's big. No, she's big. She's pretty big. So that'd be a hard one. I ain't gonna lie to you about that one. That'd be the hard one. But shout out to Clarissa Shields, man. I got a lot of respect for her. I think she's the greatest American fighter in the post Floyd Mayweather era. You know, 3-time undisputed, 2-time gold medals. It's all the numbers, champ. That's just who Tito Mercado is, man. Tito Mercado is always on go. Even when he's happy, he looks pissed off. Um, I don't think that'll happen because Silver Matias is not. I don't think he. I know for a fact he can't make 140 pounds healthily anymore. When he fought Dalton Smith, I covered that fight. That was the first fight I covered this year. He looked sapped going into that fight. He made the weight, but I don't think he made it retaining as much energy and strength as possible. I think he has to go to 47. So unless they can make that fight at 47 or a catch weight above 144, I don't see it. I made a video about it. I made a video about it. Stephen Fulton, I've been telling you guys that I don't think he's serious. I don't think his heart nor his soul is in boxing anymore. So, that all got confirmed. That all got confirmed. He doesn't want to really, he doesn't want this shit no more. This sport will tell on you. And I know he went on Twitter and tried to say, "Oh, well, I tried." No, you didn't try, bro. You didn't try. And if you tried too damn late and you weren't diligent in camp. You didn't dot your T's and cross your I's because you missed the original weight by 10 pounds, and you missed the weight that they gave you. They gave you 3 extra pounds, and you still missed that shit by like 6 pounds. So, nah, man. I'm trying not to be harsh because who am I to be harsh with these fighters that put so much into such a barbaric and grueling sport like boxing? But no, you didn't try. And it was disappointing to go to San Antonio and fly out there and spend money, my own money, to go, because I know Cruz and Roach was the main event, but the fight that got me to go to San Antonio wasn't Cruz and Pitbull, was actually Fulton and Roach, because I like Stephen Fulton. I respect him a lot. I've always thought highly of him, and I like Foster, and I was excited about that fight. And so to go there and see him blow weight, like, nah, man, you're not serious. You had a chance to really put yourself on a Hall of Fame trajectory and become Philadelphia's first 3-division champion, and you pissed it away and got promptly blanked by Oshaki Foster, and then you turned around and you missed weight again. So what I'll say is this: his heart's not in it. Hang him up, because you're not serious about it. And I think the reason why Fulton continues to blow up so much in weight, and I don't pretend to know him like that. I've only met him a couple of times, but he's got to be drinking. He's got to be like really consuming a lot of alcohol, because how do you keep blowing up in weight? I remember when he got to 126, he was already talking about going to 130. And now he gets to 130, talking about going up to 135. Like, come on, man. You got to be drinking and eating burgers and shit like that 24/7, cheesesteaks. Like, that's what it is. I've been seeing these up and coming Japanese female boxers. A lot of them are really punching almost like the men. Yeah, I there was one girl, I didn't watch her fight, but I know she fought on the Kenshiro undercard. I didn't watch her fight, but everybody tells me she was pretty good. Mizuki Ruda actually punches pretty good. Yeah, no, well, I'll tell you this, man. I'm not a big fan of women's boxing these days, even though I will say there's some really attractive looking female boxers. Um, but I remember was it last year? It was early last year in 2025. I went to a lot of shows at Corkin Hall in Japan. And one of the shows I went to was an all women's show. Like there was like 5 or 6 women's fights. And I cannot lie to you. There were 2-minute rounds. There were like 6 and 8 rounders. All the fights was good. They were all good. All the women they were in the pocket, and they were banging it out. They were throwing some heat, and I actually enjoyed that out of boxing. But yeah, no, Japanese women's fighters, much like the men, they have the same Bushido code that the men have, and they only get 2 minutes, so it's a good combination. Easy down, what's good, champ? Inoue took Fulton's soul. Now all he wants to do is eat cheesesteaks. I'll be honest with you. I think Fulton was losing his soul before Inoue. I think he was losing his soul before the Inoue fight. I actually think it started when he was trying to become the undisputed champion with Merjan Akhmadaliev. I think that was the first. Well, no, actually, no. I think that was the second domino in him losing his soul. The first domino in losing his soul, I actually think, and y'all gonna hate when I say this. Y'all gonna say it's biased, but I'm gonna give you guys my reasoning. I'm gonna give you my reasoning, and y'all can do this what you want. But I actually think the Angelo Leo fight took a lot out of him, because if you go back and you watch the fight, he was actually hurt twice in that fight. He even said himself to Brandon when he was arguing with Brandon Figueroa after their first fight. He told Brandon Figueroa that he didn't have any headaches or and he wasn't that hurt after the fight when they fought the first time. But he said when he fought Angelo Leo that he had headaches and had to go to the hospital. And then if you go look at the punch stats, Angelo landed 262 punches on Stephen Fulton, and Stephen Fulton threw like 1,200 punches. It's the most punches he's ever thrown in a fight, and he never came close to that output again. And in a 12-round fight, I don't think anybody's landed that many punches on Stephen Fulton. So I think that was the first domino because he never was able to have that high of output again. And he had some fights where the output needed to be that high to have a dominant performance. So that was domino number one. Domino number two came on the mental side. He was the unified champion. He had two of the belts. He was trying to fight Merjan Akhmadaliev to become undisputed. Merjan, didn't want to fight him and dragged it out. He lost a lot of time. He lost a lot of time waiting for him, right? And then that kind of discouraged him. So then he was going to fight Brandon Figueroa in a rematch, but then the Inoue fight came along, and he went into the Inoue fight under very unfavorable circumstances on his end. He went in on like a 16-month layoff fighting Inoue, and then Inoue did what he did, and I think that was the final nail in the coffin. And then that sparked a whole bunch of events in his life outside of boxing that ultimately never allowed him to fully get back to the mental place he was in when he was at his peak form. So I don't think it was just one thing. I think it was a multitude of things. Also, too, I think he was frustrated with PBC's lack of promotion. Because I know that he's had some unbeknownst to you guys, but he's had a lot of arguments before and after the Inoue fights with people in PBC. They don't get along, so that's what it is. Well, yeah, I mean, he was in Miami. I mean, he after the wire transfer hit and all the yen hit the account, my man was in Miami, living a good life, probably, having a great time with a lot of beautiful women of all ethnicities. And it's hard. It's hard when you start living a good life and your bank account looks good and you got businesses and you don't really need you don't really need boxing like you used to. It's hard to go to that place mentally. That's why Floyd is so special, because Floyd could have 100 M's in the bank and he's still training like he was broke. Yeah, I seen it. I see that they won by DQ, and I see they won by I watched the fight live when it happened on TV on Pro Box, and I think it was correct. I think it was the correct call, because the referee literally told his opponent, I can't remember his name right now, but the Mexican guy, he told him 3 times. He said, "Stop, stop, stop," and then he actually said it 4 times, and then this guy uncorked the right hand that literally hurt Trshawn Wiggins, and so it was an illegal blow, and I thought it was the correct ruling. And then it's unfortunate the fight happened that way, but there's rules in the sport. Follow the damn rules. And on Trshawn Wiggins' end, you got to protect yourself at all costs, champ. What you pulling back for and not putting your hands up? But I do think ultimately that the ruling was correct. Yeah, but I mean, by the way, I was one of the very few people in the boxing media that was openly vocal about picking him against Brandon Figueroa, because I thought in their first fight, especially as the fight wore on, I thought Fulton figured Figueroa out, and that showed greatly in the rematch. And Stephen Fulton did what he did. But even in that fight, he did what he had to do, and he was better than Figueroa, but still wasn't the Fulton of old. You understand? So Fulton, you gotta understand, guys, forget Fulton, forget Figueroa, forget even Angelo Leo, right? Before he even won his first world title against but before he even beat Angelo Leo for the world title, he had tough fights against Joshua Greer. He fought Adam Lopez. He was with some tough guys. It wasn't just one singular fight. Fulton was put through the gauntlet. That's what I'm saying, man. I see so many fighters who take tough fights, who give boxing fans what they say they want, and then when it's right there in front of their face, the guys never get the flowers. It's very rare and it's very seldom. And if the guys do get their flowers, it's got guys that are big stars like, Canelo or something like that. That's a good fight. That's a good fight. Hmm. Barbosa on points. I'll go Barbosa on points in a sloppy fight. But shout out to everybody here. Shout out to all 65 with y'all rock with me. I got like 10 more minutes left, and then I'll probably get up out of here and dip. But we're just sitting here basking in the glory and in what was a magnificent career for Errol Spence and a not so magnificent fight between Tim Tszyu and Errol Spence. But nonetheless, it happened, and we're here, and we've made sense of it. And happy trails to Errol Spence, and best wishes to Tim Tszyu and whatever the hell is next for him, because he's gonna need it. I don't think he's beating nobody with a big name at 60. I mean, people push the Inoue narrative because Inoue has a lot of fans and people have their own agendas, but a lot of people only started watching. Let's be real. For most people out there, I would say for everyone in the world that watches that has watched Stephen Fulton, probably 60% or more people just started watching Stephen Fulton when he fought in a way, or the first Brandon Figueroa fight. They didn't watch Stephen Fulton on the come up. See, if you really watch Stephen Fulton on his come up when he was fighting Adam Lopez and Joshua Greer and Isaac Aguilar and K Guy, Angelo, Danny, all these guys that he had to fight, there's no way that you could fix your lips and talk about him like he wasn't an absolutely fantastic fighter. You understand? You can't. Now, if you just started watching him when he fought Brandon Figueroa or especially if you started watching him when he fought Inoue and after, then you're gonna talk about a little bit. You're gonna talk differently about him, which I understand because he's been getting his ass kicked and he's been missing weight and complaining a lot on social media. So I get it. I feel like his career is a good example of, the people you have around you and your support system. That really will play on a fighter's psyche. You need to have a good support system, and he's losing the biggest fight of his career, and that's your first thought is, there goes my house. You being selfish, like that's what I'm saying. Like people just be selfish all the time. I mean, Brian Norman Jr. could knock out Tiger Johnson. Brian Norman Jr. can knock out anybody. He really is punching like that. You got to be able to handicap him and break his rhythm. Because if not, that boy's country strong and he will put your lights out. But I just feel like Brian's punch resistance isn't great. He might be a bit weight drained at 147. Um, Tiger Johnson is a good counter puncher. Unlike Devin, he will let his hands go, which obviously could get him knocked out, but I think it might get him a stoppage. I really feel like it might. So great fight. I hope it happens, and I hope it happens when I'm actually in the States and not in Japan because I want to go to that fight. I'm a big fan of both guys. I love Brian Norman Jr. Brian Norman Jr. is one of my top 5 favorite active fighters in the world. If you want to, a lot of y'all say, oh, like recently I got accused of being a Devin Haney fanboy, which I still can't believe because I gave him some credit for fighting Keyshawn Davis, right, and gave him some respect. But if you're gonna accuse me of being a fanboy for any fighter, I will let you say, BT, you're a Brian Norman Jr. fanboy, and I won't argue with you because last March, last February, April, in and around that time, I was about to leave YouTube and quit boxing, and believe it or not, Quiet has kept one of the few fighters who kept me loving boxing enough to get through a very tough time in my life was Brian Norman Jr. So for that, he's one of my favorite fighters. No, you can't really say he is. There is no best at 160. There's no best at 160. There's good fighters. He's one of the top fighters for sure. But I mean, you got Amari Jones, you got Jahai Tucker, you got Bentley, you got Yohan Elise Hernandez. Zando be in the mix sooner than you know it. So there is no best at 160. Everybody's eager to crown Yohan Elise because they feel that he's this killer and he's this and he's that. But no, nobody's the best right now. Once we get somebody that becomes unified champion, we could say that person is the best. But right now, it's wide open, and quite frankly, I think it's the worst division in boxing right now. Shout out to MEZBX. He says, "Let's be real. The last guy Tiger fought couldn't crack an egg. He stumbled Tiger multiple times. His chin isn't all that either." Well, that's what I'm saying. Brian Noman's chin isn't great. Tiger's chin isn't great. Um, but I think Tiger's a better boxer, better jab, probably a bit sharper down the middle. You know, so I'll lean towards Tiger Johnson, but I think it's a great fight. I think it's like a 53-47 fight in favor of Tiger Johnson, but that's close. That's damn near a pick 'em fight. 53-47 is a good fight, you know. And that's to me that's actually one of my favorite fights you can make in American boxing is Brian Pillman Jr. versus Tiger Johnson. I love that fight. I hope Top Rank does that fight soon. Both guys, you know, one guy already fought Devin and lost, so he's trying to get back in the mix so he can try to get his get back. And one guy got jumped and assaulted by Devin's, you know, whole family lineage out there in New York, you know. So he's trying to fight Devin on some GP, on some general principle. So the best way to do that is to fight a guy that was one of Devin's most high-profile opponents and one of Devin's biggest fights and outdo Devin's performance against him because that will command him getting the Devin fight. So makes sense. Oh, for sure, for sure. Just forget boxing, forget titles. Just on some like on GP, it has to happen on general principle. BT, it would low key be unfortunate if that's the last time we see the last thing we see of Fulton blowing a fight due to weight. It would be a terrible way to end a largely successful career. I agree. It's disgraceful because it's like when you watch movies and you watch TV shows or you read a book. A lot of times you might not remember the beginning. You might not even remember the middle if it was great, but a lot of people will definitely remember the end. Sometimes the ending is the last image you have in your head, and you know a lot of people are going to forget about. They've already a lot forget that they might forget about it. A lot of people have already forgotten about, you know, Stephen Fulton and you know his first fight, Brandon Figueroa, which was a really fun fight. They forget about as a younger fighter, him stepping up to the plate during COVID when boxing needed young fighters, young elite championship level fighters to step up to the plate and put on great fights of boxing. He did that, and he put his own on the line. Andrew Leo put his own on the line, and they gave the boxing fans a great action fight. In fact, they were, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that might have been the first, or at least one of the first championship fights on Showtime during COVID, during the pandemic, and they gave y'all a great fight. Stephen Fulton had a career best performance. Andrew Leo showed his heart and his gumption. They threw almost 2,000 combined punches, the third most punches ever thrown in a championship fight. They already forgot about it. So why think about those great things when you can just say, hey, he's a ducker and he was overrated, and, you know, he's a bum. You could say all those things. You know, that's the world we live in these days. That's what he should do. That's what he should do. Go out on a win. Go out on a win and try to right some wrongs in that win because, you know, he's not going to be – let's be real. Let's face facts. He's not going to go out on a – he's not going to be anywhere at the top level at 130 or 135 or 140, you know, since he's making 140 now. One of my last comments with this because I'm gonna end the live here soon. But if he hangs around any longer, if Stephen Fulton decides to hang around any longer, there's no way in hell I don't see PBC making him a Gervonta Davis opponent. I could definitely see him being a Tank Davis opponent. I could definitely see him being served up to Gervonta Davis, you know, and getting knocked out and making a big bag and sailing up to the sunset like that, you know. That sounds like some shit Tank Davis would do and PBC would do. What do y'all think? But guys, look, on that note, we're at the 2 hour mark, so I'm gonna get up on out of here. I'm actually really tired. I gotta get some rest. I actually have some interviews I gotta do tomorrow. A lot of editing. So just wanted to come here, pop my little stuff about Pacheco and Shiraz, tell y'all about Tszyu and what you would call it, and Errol Spence. Wish Errol Spence a good career. And but I'm gonna get up out of here. It's 4 a.m. You guys have a great day, and I will see you. I'll probably see you guys after the Zuffa boxing card. We'll come on here and try to make some sense of the Zuffa boxing card. And whatever happens on that card. So it should be a lot of fun. You guys take care. Keep supporting the channel, and I will see you in the next video, the next live, and all that good stuff. So you guys have a great night. Have a great morning. See you later.